Oh, what a beautiful time it is, folks. College football is back. We've made it through college football week one. Well, at least about 99% of it. Florida State is, I don't know what they're doing, but they're barely hanging on versus Boston College. Boston College is up 21-6 as we're recording here on this Monday night. They're deep into the third quarter, as you see, if you're watching right behind me. Embarrassing. Mike Norvell, not doing so hot there at Florida State. As you know, we had a discussion here just last year at the debacle that happened at the end of the 2023 season with the injuries and Florida State getting left out of the playoff and just the downhill slide that occurred from that point on into the future. But look, we're not going to be thinking about that tonight. We're going to be thinking about everything that we just saw this past week. But before we get into any of that, I want to say I hope you've all had a great Labor Day weekend, long weekend. Hope if you didn't have to work today, that you enjoyed your time, that you just enjoyed college football. And if you did have to work today, I do apologize, but let's look on the bright side. And this is the bright side, regardless of what's going on in the world. College football is back. We're going to have a lot of, great games this upcoming week as well. We'll get to that later in the week. But first, this is Ride Along Sports. My name is Brandon Taylor. Always glad to be here with you. We're live again here on YouTube, but you can also catch us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. It's up to you. Basically, you can search Ride Along Sports in Google if you want to, and there are many avenues that you can follow us, listen to us, watch us. We're also on social media at Ride Along Sports, so follow us there if you will. So, before we look at the SEC slate, the SEC results from this past week, I want to take a look at my headlines. See, I try to come up with some headlines going into every week, and then when we come out of a week, I want to, I want to come up with some headlines, looking back. So basically, my headlines for this week are obviously the SEC's impressive showing, but also disappointing showing. We'll get to that in a moment. And staying right there in the SEC, Vandy's triumph. Clark Lee may be doing something interesting there in Nashville, Tennessee. Maybe a little bit early to kind of pull the trigger on them doing anything miraculous this year, but the groundwork is there, and it's impressive. It's impressive to see, and it's exciting to see. And what's the third headline? Ooh. It may be worse than we thought for Billy Napier and the Florida Gators. We'll get to all that here tonight on this show. But first, why don't we get into the results? This is the results from this past week. We're just going to look at the SEC here. And here it is. So, if we take a look at all 16 games, it's getting harder to format these graphics, by the way. If you're listening to us, you don't have to worry about looking at graphics. Just listen up. I'll explain it the best I can. But we're just going to go through these, and then we'll talk about a few in a little bit greater detail. We'll start right there. The 16th ranked Oklahoma Sooners, they get a good 51-3 victory over Temple in their introduction to the SEC. Oklahoma getting their first taste of what it's like to be a Southeastern Conference program. And they do so in pretty good fashion. Moving right along, you see the number 15th ranked Tennessee Volunteers get a 69-3 victory over UT Chattanooga. Texas, number 4 ranked Texas Longhorns, in their first game as an SEC program, they get a 52-0 victory over Colorado State. Oh boy. And next up, Number 19, Miami Hurricanes go into the Swamp and destroy the Florida Gators 41-17. It's pretty bad down there in Gainesville. We'll get to that in a little while. South Carolina, performing terribly at home there, but managing to scrape a victory by the skin of their teeth, 23-19 over Old Dominion. Moving right along, Mississippi State with new, I almost said ownership, but the reins, I should say, were handed over to Jeff Lebby just the end of the past season. And they had an exciting first showing under him. The offense was firing on all cylinders. And I know that the Mississippi State fans, if you are a fan of that team, that you're excited. 56-7 over Eastern Kentucky. And look, it's Eastern Kentucky, and we all know that. And we know the majority of these teams, the majority of these games this week were teams that have no business scoring at all. But it's exciting to see your team put up a lot of points regardless. And if you're Mississippi State, you enjoyed this. You enjoyed what they did, and I don't think everybody's on board yet, but we'll talk about Mississippi State at the end of the show tonight. Moving right along, Kalen DeBoer's number 5th ranked Alabama Crimson Tide get a very good 63-0 win over Western Kentucky. And as you see right there, Arkansas, the Arkansas Razorbacks beat Arkansas Pine Bluff 70-0. And it's always exciting when you see high-scoring games, regardless if they're playing, FCS opponents, Group of 5 opponents, whatever it may be. It's always exciting, especially teams that are struggling like Arkansas, to put up that many points. It's almost like a release, okay? So let's move on to some good games here. And one good game from Saturday was the number 14th ranked Clemson Tigers facing off against number 1 Georgia. This was the Aflac kickoff game that took place right there, Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. Georgia was just absolutely dominant. 34-3, the final in that one. Moving right along here, Vanderbilt. They almost got it done in regulation. It took them going to overtime, but they triumphed. They beat Virginia Tech, a Virginia Tech team that some people favored in the ACC for this year. Now, they could still have a chance of competing for the ACC title, but it's a pretty bad first showing for the Hokies. So, Vanderbilt gets the victory, 34-27 there, and we move right along to the number 6 ranked Ole Miss Rebels under Lane Kiffin, and 3-year in the system senior quarterback Jackson Dart. They go 76-0 over Furman. The Paladins able to do absolutely nothing in this ball game, as you would expect for a team from I believe they're the Southern Conference over in FCS. They're actually pretty good in FCS on their own level, but obviously no chance when facing an SEC team. So, moving right along. One of the better games of Saturday. Now, it didn't end up going well for the SEC team, but the number 7 ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish beating the number 20 ranked Texas A&M Aggies under new head coach Mike Elko. Notre Dame gets that victory 23-13. And they blow it right there at the end. What else is there to say? We'll have some analysis on that game here in a little while. And Hugh Freeze Auburn Tigers team gets a 73-3 victory over Alabama A&M. They're going to be taking a step up this year. I'm telling you. I predicted them, I think, to go, was it 7-5 this year, which is obviously a step up from the 5-7 season. It was 5-7, right? Who's keeping up with that? Look, regardless, Hugh Freeze is going to take them one step further this year Is Peyton Thorne the answer as he improved? He's had another year in the system. He's been, developed over the spring, over the summer, and into preseason camp. Is he going to come to the rescue this year? Well, that's to be determined. There's only so much you can take from a victory over a team like Alabama and A&M. But there's going to be some tough games ahead for the Tigers, and we won't know until we know. Moving right along, the Kentucky Wildcats at home versus Southern Miss. This game was delayed like 2 hours plus before they even got it started. They managed to get a half in, and they started the third quarter. Another huge weather delay. It looked like if they did get the game started again, it was going to be well after midnight Eastern time there in Kentucky. So both programs agreed, both coaches agreed to just call the game right there. Kentucky gets the victory 31-0 there in week 1. Moving on to the game last night, Sunday night, that took place in Las Vegas, Allegiant Stadium. The number 23 ranked USC Trojans versus 13th ranked LSU Tigers. USC ends up getting the victory 27-20. LSU ties it up late in the ball game, and they can't stop USC. USC looked like they were setting up for a field goal, but they decided, hey, we're just going to score the go-ahead touchdown anyway and get out of here. So that's what happened. Another loss for the SEC. And finally, on our list, number 11, Missouri, getting a 51-0 victory over Murray State. So that is the full results of the SEC slate for week 1. And we're just talking about USC, LSU. Well, that's the first game that I want to talk about here on the program tonight. So, Brian Kelly, maybe a hope for Brian Kelly. Look, you lose your Heisman Trophy winning quarterback in Jayden Daniels. You have Garrett Nussmeier, a guy that's been in the program but has been playing behind Jayden Daniels. A lot of people were high on him. This is his second start, at least in an LSU uniform. Now, on paper, if we look at this game, and we're going to take a look at the stats first here in just a moment. On paper, these two quarterbacks, these two offenses were pretty good. The question for LSU was not the offense, because we saw last year, yes, you had Jayden Daniels, but you saw last year that the offense, had plenty of firepower. The defense was just the part of the team that couldn't stop anybody. If they just were able to get just a few more stops, the season, even last year, might have been different for them. The question was, can LSU's defense improve? And I think they did. But they got beat, one-on-one matchups. A lot of USC scores came on, and I don't even want to say busted coverages. It's just the wide receiver to DB skill, level is kind of, pretty fairly even, but USC wide receivers beat LSU's defensive backs on a number of occasions. And that's really how this game ended. It was low scoring. No score in the first quarter. The first score came with about 11 minutes left in the second, where USC got their first touchdown. But let's look at some stats and let's see if they tell us any kind of story, maybe something that we didn't know before. And I'm going to pull these up for you here, folks. So if we compare the two quarterbacks starting out, Miller Moss there at USC, He went 27 of 36, 378 yards, 1 touchdown. On the other side, Garrett Nussmeier went 29 of 38 for 304 yards, 2 touchdowns. He did have a pick. However, that was on that very last drive, the very last play where they were going to throw a Hail Mary, but I feel like they wanted to gain maybe 20, 30 yards and quickly take a timeout. Instead, there was some miscommunication, and he threw an interception. So really, that's kind of an asterisk beside that. But really, a pretty even showing from both quarterbacks. Now, if we look at the rushing stats right there under it, you see Woody Marks for USC getting 16 carries, 68 yards, and 2 touchdowns. His longest was 16. He had the game-winning touchdown, by the way, where, it looked like there at the end of the game, they were going to set up for a field goal to basically take the lead with minimal time, maybe 10 to 15 seconds left. But no, Moss handed the ball to Woody Marks, and he said, "No, we're just going to win the game, and I'm going to do it on my shoulders. We're going to get in the end zone, and we're going to take any chance of LSU coming back and getting this victory." So for LSU rushing, John Emery Jr. had 10 carries of 61 yards. He also had Josh Williams take 9 carries for 33. Caleb Jackson had 6 for 18. Receiving-wise, if we scroll down here just a little bit, Kyron Hudson for USC, 5 receptions, 83 yards. Zachariah Branch, 4 receptions for 56. You just see a lot of... really a lot of production by both receiving cores. Lake McRae there for USC, 5 receptions for 56, and you see it kind of goes on down the line there. In a similar story for LSU, although they had more success through the air, Kyron Lacey, 7 receptions for 94 yards and a touchdown, and Aaron Anderson had 5 receptions, 64 yards, and a touchdown. You see Mason Taylor had 7 receptions for 62 yards. So, I mean, really, if you look at this, Garrett Nussmeier didn't have a bad game. If you see right here, if you take a look at this, here, this breaks down the stats just a little bit more. His quarterback rating was 88.1, and that's pretty good. And Miller Moss's was 79.2. And really, what does this come down to? I think Brian Kelly kind of explained it. And I have 2 clips from his press conference that I'll play here in just a moment. But I do want to look at the team statistics here and see if that tells any bit of this story. So as we see, the third down efficiency. Let's see, first downs. Let me see, fourth down efficiency. Total yards, pretty even. Passing, fairly even within 74 yards. Rushing, not too far off. Penalties, LSU had 10 that added up to 99 yards. Now that is a problem. That is a problem. Going back up the list to the third down efficiency, which I fumbled over just a moment ago. USC was 3-9 on third downs, where LSU was 5-13. So, well under 50%, first down on third down efficiency. And that's not good. I mean, that's a lot of chances where basically your drive stalls out and you basically leave it up to your defense, a defense that has struggled, a defense that I don't know if you really trust yet because you don't know if they're capable of stopping, especially a good team like USC. But I've been dying all day to get to these two clips from Brian Kelly. And I've kind of rushed this a little bit. But let's get to these. I've got him right here. And this is the one that everybody's been talking about today, where he's a little angry. Let's see what he has to say here.
We had some guys played their butts off tonight, and we're sitting here again. We're sitting here again talking about the same things, about not finishing when you have an opponent in a position to put them away. But what we're doing on the sideline is feeling like the game's over. And I'm so angry about it that I got to do something about it. I'm not doing a good enough job as a coach. And I got to coach him better, because it's unacceptable for us not to have found a way to win this football game. It's ridiculous.
So obviously he's upset. He's upset about how his team finished that game. Obviously, how they kind of they were in there for the most part, and then they kind of fell apart at the end. A similar thing happened in another game we're going to talk about here in a moment, but that must be really frustrating. I could see how that could be frustrating for a coach. I have one other clip from him I want to play, and I'll go ahead and play that, and then we'll finish our recap of this football game. So take a look at this.
Pedestrian. They've got some good athletes. I thought the quarterback played well tonight. He outplayed our quarterback.